Now that you've found UBN Radio and discovered our quality talk shows, it's time to spread the word to friends, family, and the universe. 24 hours of music and talk. Radio without limits. That's why people keep coming back for more. That's ubnradio.com.
Welcome. It's Richard Listens on Sports here on UBN Radio TV, Universal Broadcasting Network at the Sunset Gower Studios. I don't know why I'm talking so fast. I'm your host, Peter Sobey, and I'm still talking fast. I'm here with Dr. Richard Oldberger, the one and only. We are here together and very excited for a great show today with our live studio audience, it sounds like. Big crowd out here watching the show live from the sounds of all that clapping. And
I think I put an extra shot in your latte there, Peter.
Yeah, maybe. But we're very excited about our guest today. You'll be meeting him in a little bit. Mr. Dexter Davis. We'll tell you more about him before he comes on air. But all the way to us from New York, via Oakland, via Vegas, and now here in Los Angeles. So it's very exciting to have him here. And in a moment, we'll be getting to our fitness wellness expert, Caitlin Patricia Weiler, will give us a great tip today. And Dr. Richard, how are you doing?
I'm doing as good as a Giants fan can on a day like today.
Oh, yeah, that's rough.
Yes, we learn about losing.
Well, at least it was the Los Angeles Rams this time.
That's true.
So that's a little, nice feeling about
hooray
it.
For the hometown. And I'm sure we'll touch upon it later, but also I was able to get a lot of experience with the World Series last week and got to experience Game 6, and it was a sad day in Los Angeles here, Game 7.
It was, but you and your sons got to see World Series Game 6, and you saw a home team victory.
We did, and we also got to connect with our one of our previous guests, Mr. Douglas DePalma, ball hawk and fan of the Houston Astros, and got to sit with him and get close to the Houston Astros bullpen. And so it was fascinating. Also, our connection with some of the mental skills coach for the Houston Astros and their whole journey, especially in lieu of the hurricane and things like that. So congratulations to their city and to the team, and been able to share some blog posts about that this week. Absolutely,
yeah. And, of course, I was happy for my Cubs last year. And, I'm sad the Dodgers couldn't do it, but I was happy the Astros are a good bunch. And one thing that's really amazing about that story, too, did you see that the Sports Illustrated article that's been circulating around that there was a writer, the cover of Sports Illustrated back in 2014 was George Springer, and the writer said, World Series champions of 2017 Houston Astros, with George Springer on the cover.
Wow.
Like, that's insane, because they just said the way they're building the team and this young superstar, George Springer, and there they go. They're the World Series champions of 2017, and George Springer's the MVP. That is crazy.
Tremendous camaraderie, and Gaddis, the DH, who was a former janitor a few years ago. So,
right.
What a story of and journey that goes along with sports.
And, of course, it's kind of like the bizarro Sports Illustrated cover, because a lot of people say it's a curse, and here it's like it was a prophecy that came true. So, but anyway, Richard Listens on Sports. It's fun to talk about the World Series and sports, but, we like to go deeper. Like, the motto of our show is sports and life and the intersections in between, and we like to talk about performance. Obviously, Richard being our resident psychiatrist or psychologist.
No medications here.
I'm off the before I'm calling Facebook, LinkedIn, and psychology.
You're going to half-calf, buddy. This
is crazy. Yes, but yeah, and that's what's going to be interesting about our guest today, because he's actually not from the sports world, but it's a performance in and of itself on a whole different level in the film industry, which is, one might say the most competitive industry in the world. So that's going to be really fascinating. And if you're watching us on Facebook.com/RichardListens, don't forget to check in, leave a comment. We already have our good friend AJ Collier is with us. Hi, AJ. My childhood friend from Carpentersville, Illinois. We have Carrie Burns, a friend of mine from high school. We got Matthew Peugeot saying hello from Pensacola, Florida.
Hey, Matt.
Dr. Richard's buddy. So I don't see everyone. I see a whole lot of other eyeballs here. I don't get to see everyone's name. So if I don't mention you, don't take it the wrong way. We love you all, and thanks for tuning in. And if you have any questions or comments during the show, leave it on the Facebook Live, and we'll get to it. So we do have Caitlin standing by for the Fitness Wellness Minute. or the fitness wellness tip. It's a little longer in a minute. But before we do that, exciting news, Dr. Richard. Richard Listens on Sports has a new sponsor starting this show. The sponsor of this week's episode of Richard Listens on Sport is a company called OR, which stands for Organic Relief, and it's aromatherapy essential oils. And it's kind of nice because it ties in to kind of what Dr. Richard's all about. Jarvis has you see the card up there, there's Richard showcasing it beautifully as if he was a Price is Right lady.
Can I be a hand model?
Yes. So Richard,
Dexter's like, what is he doing?
You are holding a bottle of Organic Relief. What flavor is that one, or scent?
Well,
I guess it's not a flavor. You don't drink it, but...
Well, this is 100% pure and 100% vegan, and this is stress relief.
Right. We specifically asked...
They are themed.
Yeah, we asked for... They have many, many different scents and oils, but we specifically wanted the stress relief because that kind of ties into everything that Dr. Richard's about. Relieving stress. You help people...
Thank you. You helped me relieve stress, Peter.
There you go.
But in all seriousness, we're really grateful to have sponsors coming out for the show. We're thankful that we've been doing this over a year. And I do use diffusers in my office. I do have essential oils, whether I'm by myself trying to relieve some stress or clear my mind, or working with a client. So I think it helps to stimulate the senses and get out of our thoughts when we're locked in stress mode and emails and devices. Sometimes just a few moments. A little breath of something healthy is good for the nervous system.
And basically it is an aromatherapy that you just rub a little bit on. And
you can certainly consult the website for their recommended usage, but I personally put it in a diffuser with some water, just a couple drops, so you can either have it in the air, or you can apply a couple drops to your wrist or neck area like you would a cologne or perfume.
And good news for our audience, if you're watching and you would like to purchase some of this amazing OR Organic Relief, which once again is 100 pure organic therapeutic grade, USDA certified, non-GMO, vegan, kosher, FDA approved, goes on and on. It's a really quality product. It's also, I understand from the makers, less expensive than other things on the market. With those benefits, like you don't get both those things. You don't get all those benefits and the cost, plus if you mention the promo code Dr. Richard, DRRICHARD. I don't know why I have to look to see how to spell your name. If you use the promo code Dr. Richard, you get 10% off your entire order, and you could find them at organicrelief.us. Organicrelief.us, promo code Dr. Richard, 10% off your order. Unbelievable. So great sponsorship. I love this company.
Yes. Thank you, Peter.
So there you go. A little business there. AJ, hey, gentlemen, happy I could be there with you this week. Dr. Richard doing his best Vanna White. Thank you, AJ, for pointing that out. And without further ado, we have our fitness wellness expert, Caitlin, standing by. Welcome, Caitlin, to the Richard Listens on Sports show.
How are we doing? So if anybody who can see me, I have to point out that I'm in front of an indoor rock wall right now.
I thought that's what that was.
To do with my fitness tip today. We're getting into kind of all the crazy holiday seasons, right, with November and December upon us. So, you know, when we get crazy busy and stressed with holidays and families and our to-do list, sometimes our health kind of comes second instead of first. So I thought a great tip for this week would be when we kind of get either bored with our workouts, or we feel like we can't find the right time to schedule in that workout. I thought, well, you know, what do I do when I get bored? Or what if I have extra time and I want to do a workout? Or if I don't have time and I need to hang out with my friends or see my family, how can I incorporate an activity that actually gets me a workout while I get to visit and have an experience with someone? And that's where the rock climbing came in. So indoor rock climbing, outdoor rock climbing, hiking, going for a walk on the beach, taking a new class, all these things can spice up your routine and actually motivate you during that tough holiday season where you're probably going to be consuming more calories and such. But on the other hand, like I said, it's a great idea to grab your friends or your family and do an active activity so that you can be adding to, your well-being while maybe getting something else done too, like a great visit with a friend you haven't seen for a long time or a family member. So get out there, try a new class, a new activity. You'll never know. You might find something you really love that you thought you might hate.
And that's really interesting, Caitlin. I like your suggestion of tying it in with catching up with a friend or a family member. So it kind of like kills two birds with one stone and also makes it something that you might look really forward to doing.
Exactly, yes. And sometimes you need that extra motivation from a friend or family member to, to do something like that. Maybe you wouldn't go do that on your own. So it's a good way to kind of spice up your activities and do something new.
Amazing.
Yeah, and these places are popping up all over in urban environments, these indoor rock climbing gyms. And the piece that I want to pick up on is the mental skills that happen. You may not feel like you're getting this great exercise where you're not moving the whole time, but when you're hanging there and having to figure out the next step in the puzzle about where to go, and you're indoors, if you fall on a mat, like it's kind of fun, and it challenges yourself to think while using your body. So that's a really good exploration for both young adults and what are we, older adults? What are we now?
Yeah,
Who are we now?
No, and I think it's one of those when you're specifically speaking of rock climbing, when you're doing that, like you said, you take so much of your mental capacity to do that it keeps you very present and in the moment. And I think too, when we get busy during this time of year, there's we're thinking about our to-do list in our head all the time. So it's almost like a stress reliever, kind of a active therapy, that you can be present in the moment and be enjoy it with just yourself or friends or family. And, maybe it's you're killing 3 birds with one stone, not just 2.
Wow, 3 birds with one stone.
Any amazing images you want to share from the Brooklyn Bridge yesterday?
Oh, yeah, that was awesome. I had lived in New York City for 4 years, and I had never done that. And it was like a 75-degree day in November.
Wow.
So I am glad I got that done. It was really nice.
Amazing. Look forward to seeing photos of that, and look forward to doing that myself someday.
No doubt. Caitlin, thank you for your awesome fitness wellness tip, and we look forward to seeing you live again here in 2 weeks. Have a great rest of your night.
Yes, and I'll be in studio soon, so can't wait for
Yes,
that.
very exciting.
Amazing.
All right, Caitlin, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, another great tip from Caitlin. I do like the aspect of turning, any sort of fitness wellness activity into a chance to also catch up with an old friend or something.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, like hiking growing up was like therapy. It was, the only time when people would stop fighting and get out of the car and you'd be punching at each other. But when you're climbing up the hill, like somebody can go faster. You get left behind. So yeah, it gets you out. It gets you oriented. It really gets your nervous system connected. It gets your vision connected to nature. And it just helps settle everything, and it makes whatever we're stressing about seem so much smaller.
Right. So we're going to get to our guests here in a moment, but first, Dr. Richard, I'm going to tie it all together and get to our guest. But besides the World Series adventure, you've also, anyone who's looking at your Facebook.com RichardListens page, you've been out and about a lot with events with your kids, soccer match, right?
I've been all over. It's been a tremendous journey, and that's why I love this show. It forces me to get out there and meet amazing people, and that's where I'm happiest, and that's what the show is about encouraging people to step into realms where they're going to find their happiness, whether that be comfortable or a little bit uncomfortable along the way. So yeah, there's been UCLA women's soccer matches, getting to meet some of their players, and it's happening so fast. The more we do of it, becomes a little bit of a blur. But yeah, it was amazing to be in the World Series, and amazing to tie in how we met our guest even.
Exactly. You saw my segue. That's exactly where it was going.
Well, that's the beautiful thing. Peter, I'm indebted to Peter for pushing me to do this show a few years ago. We were talking about how, doing things that are uncomfortable. This has always been, initially it was really uncomfortable for me, and our guest and I, behind the scenes we're talking about maybe stage fright or anxiety. So I'm thankful for Peter for that and for pushing and supporting me. And it's really fortunate to have someone in your life that does that. And in January, I believe it was January. February, thank you. Peter was honored to speak on a panel along with our guest on diversity in the media up at the prestigious Stanford University. And it's just such a pleasure to be up there and see Peter pushing himself and putting himself out there and continuing to grow, and those that he draws to his life. So this is where I get to sit back and enjoy the ride a little bit and see the synchronicity that's coming from this whole experience.
Yeah, and we met so many great people up there, but we were very grateful to meet our guest, Mr. Dexter Davis, on that panel. And without going into a lot more, Dexter Davis is an amazing filmmaker, producer, distributor of film. His story in and of itself is inspiring, and we will hear about that. But without further ado, Dr. Richard, let's welcome to the show Mr. Dexter Davis. Welcome, Dexter.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Richard. It's good to be here.
Yeah, and it's good to have you live in the studio.
Good to be in studio.
Now, you are in Los Angeles, right? I mean, you come here often, but you're here specifically for the AFM market, right?
Yes. The American Film Market, which is a kind of like a trade show for the film industry where buying and selling a film takes place annually. You have a few of these throughout the year. There's one in Cannes, the Marché, and then you have Toronto, and you have the Berlinale in Berlin in February, which is the European film market. But so always pleasure to be in LA, but in Santa Monica without the traffic.
Yes.
But came all this way to say hello to you guys. So I'm really pleased to be here.
And we're pleased to have you.
Thank
It's
you.
good to see you again since
Likewise.
last time we saw Dexter was in February. And now here he is live in our studio. So much to talk about with you. Like, some people might say, hey, the show's called Richard Listens on Sports, and you're introducing a filmmaker. But keep in mind, like I said before, we talk about sports, life, and the intersections in between. Now, Dexter does have a sports-themed project that we'll get to, but where he falls into place is we talk about performance a lot as well, and like I said earlier, that the film industry is one of the most competitive industries in the world, if not the most competitive industry in the world. So it's definitely going to be interesting to hear about what it takes and the obstacles of getting a film distributed in today's day and age. And obviously there's very hot topics in the news right now about Hollywood and producers and people in authority abusing that authority that we want to get to. But to start off, Dexter, your story is fascinating. You just like your personal story that we heard a little bit at Stanford. So maybe you wouldn't mind sharing with our audience, like, how did you become Dexter Davis, the CEO owner of D Street Media Group that makes and distributes films?
Sure.
I mean, you come from very humble beginnings.
Well, I think humble is an understatement. I was born in Greenville, Mississippi, which is a town, I think, population 40,000 people, perhaps. Very impoverished, not a lot of opportunity. Today, it's probably worse than it was 47 years ago when I was born. My parents met a person in San Jose, California. My dad had a hobby, the CB radio, and they became friends. And this guy, his nickname or his
His handle?
His handle, yeah. I was going to say his screen name. But I don't think they had screen names in 1970.
What was his CB handle?
Pizza Pie. In fact, I was just telling this story the other day that, my mom and dad with 5 kids in a U-Haul moved to San Jose, California, knowing no one but, this guy that they met over the CB radio. And we ended up living in their garage on a mattress for like 4 months. And
all out of the hobby that he loved.
Yes. Well, it was more about opportunity. And my dad, was is an entrepreneur, and my mom as well. And they just wanted something better for their lives. And this guy was kind of a light for them. And they, at that time, San Jose was growing very quickly. And for my dad as an engineer, there were possibilities for him to do well. And my mom ended up, working at a hair salon and then creating her own businesses from there. And there you go. And now I'm here, and I'm a film producer. And that started actually it came about because I read a book called Silence of the Lambs.
Wow.
Yeah, I was in college, and I, my brother was involved with his book club, and I would always open his books and read them. And this one I read in like 2 days, very thick book, and I could see it as a movie. And I told everybody, you got to read this book, and they should make this book into a movie. And 3 months later, I was watching television, and there was a trailer for the film, and it felt like I had predicted
that your intuition
yes
was insightful enough that you could potentially do this.
Yeah. So I basically I was a theater arts major, and decided to. We didn't have a film school, but we had a broadcast communication area in at San Jose State, and changed my major and minored in marketing, and just said that's what I'm going to do. And of course, I graduated and worked for a bank.
Which I guess you could say finance experience is good for the film industry, right?
Very much so. Yeah, especially if you're a producer and if you're executive producing and running a company, you need to know a little bit about numbers.
A little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I basically moved to San Francisco, worked in Oakland at a bank. Really got tired of that very quickly, and watched a guy named Les Brown on PBS doing a telethon marathon. Is that what it is? A marathon or telethon?
Telethon.
Right.
Telethon is a telephone.
But you
marathon.
could say, you could say it's a telethon marathon or a marathon telethon, sure.
Yeah, and I had never seen a black inspirational speaker, and this guy was saying things that were speaking directly to me because I was living in San Francisco. I lived in Twin Peaks. I had a very expensive apartment. I couldn't pay my rent. I was buying art that then I would have to borrow money from my mom and dad to help me pay for rent. And I said, God, I can't imagine doing this for 50 years. I really want to do something that I love and will bring happiness and joy to my life. And basically just decided I was going to be in the film industry, and it was as simple as that. Not as simple as that, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, totally. But I mean, without going into too much though, then going from working at a bank and knowing that you have a love of film and you have an intuition for film, how do you take the leap? I mean, now you own a freaking distribution company.
Well, I moved to. Well, let's go back. I worked at a show called Bay TV, a network in San Francisco, which was an NBC affiliate, KRON, and it was sort of at the beginning of cable TV, and I was a PA, so I got some experience working in television, but not executive experience. I was fetching coffee basically. But I've always been very, very ambitious, and I had an idea for a kind of an entertainment magazine show. And I basically raised some money, and not really knowing what I was doing, I put together a pilot for this show called Out Talk Magazine. And it was semi-successful, I would say. We did that for a while, and I really wanted to pursue film and decided that I was going to take the plunge and just move to Los Angeles. I didn't know anybody here, but I just really believed in myself. And I had a little bit of cash, so I didn't have to, wait tables or, do the typical LA thing where people come here and they're doing something else and pursuing their dream. But I was actually able to focus on, learning about the film industry. So before I attempted to do anything, I just basically networked for 2 years and met all kinds of people and went to award shows and film festivals, and people would ask me, what do you have a film here? Why are you Sundance, or why are you at Cannes or Toronto? And I said, well, I'm a film producer. And they were like, what do you produce? Well, nothing yet, but I'm a film producer. Trust me. And some years later, 2003, I met a director in New York called John Young, and he had a script that he thought he could make for like $2 million. I read the script and said, it's a really good script. The title sucks. And, you're not going to get Will Smith, and you're not going to be able to raise $2 million. But why don't we do this for $5,000?
Wow.
So
can you tell us what the old name was and what the new name became?
Sure. It was called A Moment in Time.
Pretty generic.
Well, it was a Hallmark type title, I thought, you know, and just didn't really fit. And I ended up saying, I think I said, this film is called The Reception, because basically that was a story around this couple who comes and visit the wife's estranged mother. And, they announced that they had gotten married, and the mother decides to throw them a reception, and sort of all these dark things comes out over a course of a week. And it just kind of made sense. So we made that movie in 8 days in upstate New York for $5,000.
Wow. And
ended up screening at Tribeca in 2005 to sell out crowds, 800-seat theaters, and rave review in the New York Times and Variety and Hollywood Reporter. It was crazy. Like my first film for $5,000, and we sold it. We distributed it.
So that must have been amazing on many fronts then. Not only have you produced your first film, but you've done it in a way where you saved the director money.
Well, it was more about me being competitive, and Robert Rodriguez had done a film called El Mariachi for like $9,000.
Right.
And I said, let's kick his ass. And
I love that.
And John had a film previously at Sundance, so he had that pedigree. And I thought, we can get actors to work on deferment, and it's basically in one location, and there's digital film now or digital, and let's go for it. The deal was, let's get it in the can for $5,000. It's going to be more for post and music licensing and whatever, but we could actually say honestly that we've shot a film in 8 days for $5,000.
Yeah, which even back then is monumental. That's crazy. And
Yeah,
that was your jumping board.
it was kind of everything, because I at the time was living in London. I believe, I was living in London at the time, and it was 9/11 had happened. I had this company here in Los Angeles, and it was affected by 9/11, and we ran out of money, and I was offered a gig to do in Scotland, and that didn't really come together. Then I moved to Paris to kind of pursue international films and how they were put together, and ended up in London. And on a trip to New York, I met John, the director, and so I raised the money and funded this film, and so many things as a result of that. When your first film comes out and you have a positive, New York Times review, it changes everything. And Tribeca at the time, was a gift to New York after 9/11. And we were very fortunate to be programmed in their New York section of the festival in terms of directors. And really, after that, I moved to Berlin and got a deal with Volkswagen to do distribution and P&A, and they were giving us money to market foreign language films in North America. So that film really just, everything happened as a result of that one film that I'm very proud of today.
Yeah. So that meeting you had with John, I mean, because that's probably a key moment to convey to people out there who maybe have not walked the Dexter Davis journey, but come from humble beginnings and have these high aspirations. You mentioned coming into this city and have a big dream to do something big, but they have no idea how to convey that intuition that you were able to John when you met him. What do you think you were able to convey to him during that initial meeting, and what would you tell people out there like yourself about that opportunity?
Well, I mean, he's a very bright guy. I mean, obviously, he was very talented. He had, done this successful film that was at Sundance some years before. And he wanted to do something bigger. He wanted to, piggyback off of that first film that he had done, and I understood that. But he wanted to tell a story that was very similar to 6 Degrees of Separation. I don't know if remember that film with Will Smith,
Right?
And yes, and Will plays a gay character. Which was based on a true story where this guy pretended to be Sidney Poitier's son, and befriended this very wealthy family that was scammed by him, basically. And it turned into a movie with Stockard Channing, and
that was Will's dramatic breakout.
It was, but he got a lot of pushback from the industry, mostly other actors, black actors, who said, you shouldn't play, gay characters. It could be a detriment to your career. And so John wanted, this story had some similar parallels to 6 Degrees of Separation in that there was a gay character in the film. And I said, look, you're not going to get an actor of real substantial, A-list guy to play that role. It was written for a black actor. And so this dream of yours, which I think I'm right there with you on it. We can make it happen, but let's not think about stars. Let's think about just telling a really good story. And if we tell a really good story, I think there's an audience out there. And at the time, there was lots of conversations about, gays in cinema and on television and so forth. And I said we could take advantage of that, and we did, and it was really well received. And so, prior to coming to LA, I always had this instinct to learn about the industry. I always thought that was really important. If I'm going to come out and raise money and risk other people's money, I should know what I'm doing. And a lot of people don't share that, or they don't think about that.
Yeah, a lot of people will just talk the talk, but not walk the walk. Especially out here, like it's easy for people to say, like, "Oh yeah, I'm a director or producer or whatever," but it's really interesting that you went about it the way of like, "I'm really going to learn this business inside and out," and then emulate. Come out with that first film and show that you could really walk the walk. And now look at you.
Well, I read Spike Lee's book, Any Means Necessary. I read David Geffen's bio. I looked at, people who came before me, Pickford, Mary Pickford. I read the story on Mary Pickford and how she was, so instrumental as an independent, not only actor but producer, that did things her way, and I took lessons from those folk and applied them to my own life, and this business is really complicated and it's very difficult to succeed at it, but if you come empowered with knowledge, it helps immensely, and I was empowered to learn everything and anything I can about the industry, surround myself with people who are smart and knew the business, and decided that when I go out to make that first film, I'm going to know what to do with it. So I knew how to sell it. I knew how to market it. I knew how to take it to festivals. I knew things that first-time filmmakers usually don't know because I watched people who knew what they were doing and just pretty much emulated what they did.
So what's interesting, Dr. Richard, is like Dexter's journey is a lot like the athletes that we talk to sometimes as well. The young athletes that have a dream of, becoming a professional. They maybe got inspiration from a figure in their life that inspired them to follow that dream, and then they get out and do it.
They do, and the we don't always see the adversity along the way. We don't, some of these journeys when they share about, Yasiel Puig or coming from Cuba or just like what it's like to even be under that pressure of harassment that they're afraid you might leave a country. And there was even, an incident in the World Series, I think, involving one of the players and Yu Darvish, who happens to be, I believe, half Iranian and half Japanese, if I'm correct. But these deep-seated misunderstandings in this old boys network, and when it comes to performance in athletics as well as in Hollywood, there have been people along the way that have kind of bucked the system or challenged the way things are. It's incredible to me. Until I attended that diversity conference last year with both of you fine gentlemen, I was not aware of the statistical minority representation of even women in acting. And I watch television and film daily, and I feel like I'm seeing equal representation. So as long as the masses believe that, they're not going to fight to challenge it. So I'm interested, so you have this individual journey for yourself in this industry, in your passion, but then you have an awareness that you may want to challenge. And so I'm curious how that evolved for you, both, wanting to secure your dreams and find success and security versus where do you, set your boundaries in terms of what's right and what do you want to see change?
Sure. I'm a gay black male in an industry where there are not a lot of openly gay black men in front of the camera or behind the camera. There are. They're just not out. And I never wanted to hide who I am, and I wanted to just always tell the truth. I didn't. I had a really great upbringing, parents who loved me, great family, brothers who we all love each other dearly. And when I was 18, my mom told me I was gay.
Wow, so it wasn't a problem to come out to your parents then.
I was like, no, actually I'm not, and I'm not ready for this conversation. I'm not done with college yet, and I've been practicing for like 4 years in the mirror when it was time for me to say, if you can't love me for who I am, there's no room for you in my life. I actually would look in the mirror and say that because I was preparing myself to be rejected. But she beat me to it and was like, dude, you're gay. We love you. All your brothers know. Your whole family knows. And we're here to support you. So go off to college and do well and be safe. And that was tremendous.
That's such a beautiful moment. That must give you tremendous freedom going forward into the world. To tackle this behemoth, all the ignorance and all the challenges ahead of you.
Well, basically, I always tell people that it kept me safe. One, I was fearless in terms of going out into the world and doing whatever I thought I wanted to do, because I always felt like I always had a home to go to if things just failed miserably. I always they would say that go out and challenge yourself and do remarkable things, and if you don't succeed, that doesn't mean you're a failure. Come home, regroup, and start again. And so having that sense of family and connection and, to feel empowered to go out into the world and not get myself into trouble because I, needed validation through other people. I felt like that kept me safe. It kept me, from, all kinds of, diseases. I don't know how to say this without being impolite, but it kept me safe. How about that? And it gave me a lot of courage, and so growing up with that, it inspired me to want other people to experience that as well. And I thought, in film and television, we have a really huge opportunity to tell stories and convey to people, the positive side of all kinds of situations in one's life that we go through, and I was I was on a mission to tell great stories and important stories. It's a business certainly, but I feel like I have a responsibility just as a human being to do the right thing and be, if I'm going to be openly gay and out and be proud. I want to create opportunities for other people to be themselves and to work in an industry that often doesn't always celebrate those things. And so when I see bad behavior or lack of opportunity, I want to stand up and say, look, come to to see what we're doing and there's opportunity and also for the African American community film community where there's not a lot of executives. I wanted to create a platform for people of color in executive positions because I think that's important too. When you have the power to say yes, that's a really big deal.
It is. So there's so many things you brought up, so many directions to go into, but I do want to do a little, in the current thing that's going on in the entertainment industry with all the sexual harassment and assault allegations. We are going to go into that a little bit, tied into a story. But before we leave what you were just talking about now, we like to inspire and motivate. And I'm sure by what you've said already, there's so many people out there that are inspired and motivated by your story. But what advice would you give the young African-American boy or girl who's gay, whether they want to get into the film industry or somewhere else? They're afraid to embrace who they are, to be themselves. Maybe they're in a situation where they don't have the supportive parents like you did. What can you say to encourage those people out there?
Well, I don't know if that if it's about someone being gay or just being a human being,
Sure.
know. And, I would say this across the board to anyone, know your craft. Coming prepared is so important. It's more than half the battle to be prepared. And I really don't think I'm that clever. But I just had this instinct to wanting to understand what the business of film was about. So I tell talent all the time, people who are going after their dreams in terms of being an actor or being a director, know your craft and study. You have plenty of time to be famous and successful and all the stuff that comes with that. But if you don't know what you're doing, how can you sit at the table and be respected and be heard? And so by the time I, got to my first film and, we're negotiating the contracts, I knew what terms were in those contracts because I asked questions. We were, at that time, the internet was, brand new, and so you can get information, and I did. AOL was my friend. I was on that damn thing all the time. And it was just it still is for me. It's fascinating.
And I've heard this before from families that come to this country from other countries. The parents don't know. They can't teach them about maybe modern industry, and I've heard people literally, Google and Wikipedia, and you can learn anything.
Anything. It's so valuable, and it's free, and people don't take advantage of it. And I think I love the fact when I think of something, I can just go to my phone or whatever device and look it up, and there it is. What a gift that is, and you don't have to pay to get information.
Yep.
So when I go out into the world doing what I'm doing, it's highly competitive. It's still competitive for me as well. But I never feel unqualified. I never feel at a disadvantage, because if I'm sitting at the table, you better be sure I know what I'm talking about. And because I never want to be in a situation where someone knows something that I ought to know and I don't know it.
True. Now, Dexter, I still want to get into the current state of affairs in Hollywood with what's going on. But another thing I want to mention first, because I think one of the most, there's many amazing things about you, but in this article you shared with us, and I learned this at Stanford when we were on the panel together, you've got a lot of upcoming films that you're going to be producing and releasing, and you're doing a lot with co-productions with South Africa. Mm-hmm. And I want to hear about that. But there is this quote from the article you sent. I'm not going to do the whole quote, but this quote, it's amazing. So this quote from you, it was a metaphor for what was happening in the world. There has to be cooperation amongst people and nations. If we don't, then how can we succeed in our own global community? That's an amazing quote. So, it's
Thank you.
So, and that's tied in with the production in South Africa. So maybe explain that a little bit to our audience.
Right. So you're talking about a film called The Blue Mauritius,
yes,
which I'm producing next year in South Africa.
Which is a sexy, action-packed love letter to Cape Town, in your own words.
It is. It is indeed. It was 2004. I was living in Berlin at the time and fell in love with Berlin. And I wanted to make a movie in Berlin, actually, that showed the sexiness of Berlin. And I was with my accountant. I was putting together, we have a German subsidiary, and we were putting together that subsidiary. And every Thursday we would meet over ice cream, because Matthias, who my accountant, loved ice cream. So we'd meet at Potsdamer Platz. And one afternoon I asked him what he was doing after the meeting. He said, well, I'm going to go to the Post Communication Museum and see a stamp. And I said, Mateus, you really are perpetuating the boring accountant stereotype. Like, that's really shameful. Who goes to a museum to see a freaking stamp?
This is not very sexy right now.
It's not sexy at all. So he went on to tell me about, oh no, he's like, well, there's this stamp and we got it back after reunification from the Americans, and it's the oldest stamp in the world, and gave me some background, and I instantly came up with an idea for a heist movie. So cut to many years later, I had visited Cape Town and fell in love with Cape Town and thought, actually, I'd like to shoot this movie in Cape Town. But I wanted to make a movie, a really international film with stars from all over the world. And I didn't want, an American, playing a British guy with a really bad accent, and we don't do British accents very well.
No, we don't.
Not at all. So, and that was the time, at the time, it was the Iraq War and the Bush administration, and everyone was really pissed off with us. And I thought about, collaboration, because that's what we were all talking about, getting on with each other. And, we were, in New York, they were, calling French fries freedom fries, and, throwing, red French wine out into the streets. It was just appalling. I had French friends who were afraid to speak in line because, they were against the war. And so this movie came about as, I wanted to do something really commercial, but I wanted to do something that was kind of a metaphor for what was happening. And so the movie is about 5 international thieves who go to Cape Town to try to steal the most valuable stamp in the world. And if they don't cooperate with each other, nothing happens.
Great story.
I think so.
I love it. Now, that actually does kind of tie into the topic that we've been dangling here for most of this show, and that is something that is big in the news, not only in Hollywood, but it's obviously taken over the world, and that's all the, the Harvey Weinstein, Kevin Spacey, everyone that's the, Roger Ailes, the list goes on and on, the Roy Price, the Amazon guy. So there's a lot of the sexual harassment, the sexual assault that's coming out of the woodwork. What's interesting is that how it ties in with you is because people are now finally coming out and standing up for it. But regarding this very picture you're putting together, you yourself, before all of this came out, took a stand. Tell us a little bit about that story.
Sure. So, as I said, there's 5 international stars or actors who come to Cape Town to steal this stamp. And so there's a French thief, a German thief, an American, a Brazilian, and a South African. I'm not sure if I'm leaving anyone out. But we were lucky enough at the time to cast a guy named Gerard Depardieu in the French role, who's quite well-known, legendary French actor. And, for, me to work with that guy was, just a dream come true because he's such a legend. So during our negotiations, his agent phoned me and said, look, Gerard had some problems, and I want to go into every detail. But one of the problems he has is he gets himself in trouble with women on sets. And so I was sort of taken aback and, what do you mean? And she said, well, he's been known to, harass women on sets. And I said, oh, okay. What do you do with that?
Yeah.
Right? So this legendary actor, prestigious to my film for sure. His agent is telling me something that she wants me, she felt it was important enough for me to know. And so I just kind of knew right away that there's no way in hell that this guy is going to work on my film. One, I love my mother, and I have lovely nieces and friends who are women, and I wouldn't want to, for 1 minute, have them in an environment that was unsafe. So why would I want that for anybody else? And I said, well, this is too bad, but we can't work with him. And so we dropped him from the picture.
Wow.
And you've used that word, frequently, the importance of safety, both psychological and emotional safety. And it's amazing that was then being placed in conflict with some vision of success, and that you had the fortitude within yourself to immediately know which one you needed to choose.
Mm-hmm. Well, look, as an independent, I'm just that. I'm independent. So I really don't have to answer to anybody, except for myself and my conscience. And I just, in good conscience, could not, and not like I'm sitting on some soapbox or standing on a soapbox. I just thought, why would I go forward with that? And if I have the power, to make a decision, that I think is good and good for business, but also good for, people being safe on the set. That's my responsibility to do that. So, it wasn't that big of a deal for me to make that decision. Obviously there were other people who were quite disappointed because they saw, him as being Gerard Depardieu and what that meant financially. But I thought, well, there's probably another French guy that who has a good reputation and that we can still make money.
But I think it was really quite extraordinary because obviously as now everyone is learning, so many people are willing to look the other way because, and I'm not speaking of the victims here, I'm speaking of people that knew what Harvey Weinstein was doing, but they're like, oh, we don't want to ruffle Harvey Weinstein's feathers and say anything. Once again, not the victims, like his friends that knew what was going on and everything. But here you were taking a stand for it. That's definitely like walking the talk,
right?
Because you said earlier that you're an independent and you're standing by what you feel and believe in. And I'm glad now that we do have an atmosphere in Hollywood where people, victims of these things, can start standing up and sharing their stories and making more awareness of it. Jarvis, what do we got? We just got a couple minutes left, right? 7? Yeah. Oh, okay, we're good. So, Dr. Richard, being that you're our resident psychologist, what is your take on this current, outbreak of victims being able to speak up about it? And what words would you give the people that, have had to suppress this for so long and that are facing this, but it's hard to, for them to come out with some of these stories?
There's so many angles that I'd like to, that come to mind. Firstly being that it's really shocking to me, both in my own subconscious and then the American culture, that we've begun to accept this. That this is, I watched, I think it was called Project Greenlight, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck and Harvey Weinstein. They get him on the phone, and it was like that people were terrified of him, and he would scream at them. And I obviously treat people in the entertainment industry, and it was kind of known, when you go in to take a meeting, that you were going to get abused. And so this abuse of power is not a new thing in this industry or in other industries. Even on a personal level, my own family was affected by big business, real estate, some of the, mafia style ways of conducting business. So it's shocking that it's still going on, but it is so relieving that things are changing, that when people are speaking out, it's spreading quickly. And people seem to be speaking out. I don't know what the project on Facebook was called when people started to speak out and just openly kind of.
Oh, yeah, it was like #MeToo.
Yeah.
That really spread fast.
And even that people, how many people are holding on to these pains that they can't talk about and that are causing them shame and they feel alone in, and now they don't have to. And why should anyone have to feel like they're, in their workplace being sexually harassed, having staplers thrown at them? Everything that goes on in the junior levels of wanting to become a talent agent or to grow within this community. So if anything is being done to say we're stomping out people who have abused that, and I hope that criminal charges are going against people that are abusing minors. This is really scary that if a mother sent their 14-year-old child off to meet with an agent because this was his dream, that they didn't have that safety that Dexter's speaking about. So I think openness, collective consciousness, and this way the internet really helps us in spreading the knowledge and awareness out there of what's right, what's safe, that you should be able to, be judged on the base of your, merits of your performance, and feel safe in the workplace.
Absolutely. And anyone out there watching us here on UBN Radio TV at the Universal Broadcasting Network or Facebook.com Richard Listens, if you do feel like you don't have someone to talk to, Richard listens. So definitely reach out. Richard's always more than happy to return emails, Facebook messages, anything like that. So reach out to Dr. Richard at Facebook.com Richard Listens or Instagram or Twitter @Richard Listens. Seriously.
Yeah, we appreciate the growth in Instagram followers and all the comments and stories that people want to come share with us and come on the show. We appreciate the students that are out there that probably are wanting to speak with Dexter and figure out how they can continue the trend of bringing more diversity, how they can represent a greater challenge to status quo. And we want to support in any way we can as an entity.
Absolutely. So we only have a few minutes left of the show, a couple minutes. So Dexter, you're here for AFM, the American Film Market. You have a big slate of films. Just give us a little rundown real quick of what we have to look forward to from D Street Media Group.
Sure. So the Blue Mauritius, which I just mentioned, and we just
the sexy action-packed love letter to Cape Cod.
Cape Town.
Yeah,
Cape Town.
Cape Cod. What?
Wow, you may have given him his next film idea.
So we're doing that film with Anthony Mackie of Avengers and Captain America, and we know him from Hurt Locker. I think that was his first sort of really breakout role. So that's very exciting. We have a film that we're doing with a guy named Joe Newcomb, who executive produced the Dallas Buyers Club.
Yep.
So that's a film that's taking place next year in Atlanta. We're doing a Brazilian sort of in the vein of what was the Brazilian film? City of Gods.
Oh, yeah.
And this one's called Mocho Anjos. So we're doing that next year. We have a Swedish film called Winter's Rose that talks on depression and grief. So it's very European.
Yes.
Wow.
Something right up your alley, maybe, Richard?
Well, just make sure their therapists take off every summer. So make sure you stay culturally relevant.
Right. We have a couple UK independent films that we're distributing. One's called The Messenger, and the other one just escapes me right now. I can't even think of the name of it, but it's a busy year.
Yeah,
for us.
Are you, obviously what's the website? D Street?
Mediagroup.com.
So it's like the letter D, Street, Mediagroup.com. Are you open to people, contacting you through the website there?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah,
I think we have an info email address or something like that. I think that info@dstreetmediagroup.com.
Yeah, so that's amazing. So feel free to reach out to Dexter at D Street Media, and maybe if you have questions for him or you want to share your story with Dexter because you were inspired by his story, whatever. But of course, if you have a great film, he might be interested in it. You never know.
Might be.
So we're down to our last minute. Dexter, thank you for coming all the way to the studio, being our live guest. It was great to see you again after meeting you at Stanford earlier in the year.
Likewise, Peter.
So thank you so much for being a great guest.
Well, thank you for having me.
And Dr. Richard, we will be back live in 2 weeks, and our guest then will be a colleague of yours, Mr. Freddie, who I don't know his last name, actually.
Well, he's shortened it. I don't want to Ito.
Okay.
But it's
Frederick Ito.
Yes. He's got a longer Nigerian last name, which he'll help us pronounce correctly.
Right.
But he's a wonderful young man, and he is a former Division I basketball player, and he is out there helping Los Angelinos, adolescents, adults, and interested to hear his story and how we came across.
Amazing. And then we have a couple shows left before the end of the year in December. We're going to be welcoming back Paul Shirley, I think, because he's got a new book out.
Stories he tells on dates.
And then hopefully we'll be able to squeeze in. We still have Ken Ravizza from the Cubs and Jesse Michael, the Houston Astros.
Maybe when he gets done parading.
Yeah, so we have a lot of great things coming up. And once again, we'd like to thank our new sponsor, OR, Organic Relief. You can find them at organicrelief.us for their essential oils and to help you relieve stress and have good sense and meditative states. But we're really happy to have them as a sponsor, and we thank you for watching, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks here on Richard Listens on Sports.
Take care, everybody.